Good evening. We will call the Lindbergh Schools Special Board of Education Tax Rate Hearing Meeting 1560 to order. And we will move to Joelle.
Thank you. I have a presentation. It's that time of year again, a very important time when we set the tax rate for the year that we're already in. And so we have a hearing annually per state auditor's office. There's an annual hearing, and we posted the estimated tax rate 2 weeks prior in several places throughout the district. We posted it in Sunset Hills and City Hall and in Crestwood City Hall, and then we have it on our website and here as well. So next page. Factors that affect the tax rate, of course, our assessed valuation in our area. This year is a non-reassessment year. Every other year, there's reassessment, non-reassessment. The year that we are in is non-reassessment, which means the St. Louis County does not come out and look at your properties and reassess. Every year, there's new construction and improvements and increases in personal property. An example of new constructions and improvements that has not hit yet is something like the Toys R Us store becoming the Bass Pro Shop. So that will hit the books eventually. Another factor is the Hancock Amendment. It is a Missouri statute that does not allow us to increase the levy above a 5% increase. So if assessed values in the area were to go up 20%, we have to lower our levy to keep the taxpayers harmless. This year, the Consumer Price Index was 7%, but our actual growth was much lower, so we're limited to actual growth. Debt also affects the levy. When we have new bond issues, you may look at a tax rate. Our last bond issue was a no tax rate increase, so the rate for debt has not changed for many years. And then the state auditor's office does review the rates prior to them being set with the county. Next slide. We think about the tax rate all year. I'm not going to go through all the points in the year that we think about it, but it's in January, of course, when all the tax bills start going out to our patrons. That's the start of it. We get our first information from the county on a non-reassessment year in late August. And then we bring that information to the board in September, set the rate on October 1st, and then start receiving the taxes in December and January. And then we start all over. Next slide. I have information here about our current assessed valuation and the previous 5 years. As you can see from the top line, our assessed valuation continues to grow, which is great. We are in a growing value district. The next two lines show new construction and increase in personal property. These are the annual items that every year we get full value of those additions to assessed valuation because they're new or an improvement to a property from a prior year. So this year, our new construction and improvements was $8.5 million, and then I have a history there of the previous 5 years. Last year was a large number. We were very surprised by that. As you can see, prior years weren't as much. Generally, when we budget for this, because we adopt the budget in June, prior to knowing this data, we have historically used a 3-year average. Last year, for this June budget, we did use a 4-year average because we thought that 20 million was an anomaly. It's not normal. So we have 8.5 million, which is right about what we budgeted for new construction. The next line was a big surprise. If you look at the increase in personal property tax, the 1-year increase, because they do assess personal property on an annual basis, was $47 million. That is not a typo. You can look at the past history. We were nowhere near. I went back to 1986, that far back, and it has never been that high. We had a lot of conversations with CFOs throughout the region who also saw the same number. We made contact with St. Louis County and talked to their assessor attorney, and their comments regarding that uncommon increase was, number one, an influx of pandemic dollars or relief funds into communities throughout the state, and then so people actually buying more personal property. And then the other item of why that increase is so high is because the value of cars and used cars. So I'm challenging everyone to, when you get your tax bill this year, when you think your used car's got a little bit older and value's going to be less, please report back, because When we did file this with the state auditor's office, she sent us a letter back. I talked to my peers at other districts, and everybody got that letter back saying, please check your personal property values, this seems extreme. So it is a very strange thing, and I'm going to say we've been in strange 2 years, and we're digging ourselves out. So we'll hopefully be back to some norm next year. So our actual growth of property that existed in both years, this does not include new construction or new personal property. It's property that was on the books last year and on the books this year. That was a 0.89%, which if you look at our non-reassessment years, that's more the norm. Normally in a non-reassessment year, we see 0 or right under 1%. And then this year, the consumer price index was 7%. So we are limited to the lower of actual or consumer price index are 5%. Just different times, very different things and hard to predict. Next. So with that data and what was filed with the state auditor's office, we do in St. Louis County set 5 different levies. It's the only county in Missouri that does it this way. We set a levy based on residential, agricultural, commercial, and personal property. Everyone sets a debt service levy. I will tell you that the residential rate in Lindbergh is the lowest rate you can have for residential property in the state of Missouri. It cannot go any lower. There are very, very few districts that are at this low level, and Lindbergh is one. Out to the right, I have another little comment about recoupment. This year we do have something new again. Last year, when the St. Louis County gave us the assessed valuation data in August, they gave us a number, and then when we got our final numbers in December, when all tax things were complete, the number was lower. So when we set our levy in September, we did not have accurate data, and we had to lower our levy somewhat because they said our growth was higher. Because like I said, if AV grows above inflation rate, we have to lower our levy to hold the taxpayers harmless. So this happened also in St. Louis County to most of the school districts. What you can do at the state auditor's office is kind of like amend your tax return that you do as an individual. We can go back at this time of the year, amend our prior year tax levy, and recoup those cents that we rolled back too much due to the error from St. Louis County. So we're looking at right now a blended rate, which is the rate they use to compare with other Missouri districts, of $3.93. It is about 10 cents higher than it normally would be because we're going back and correcting our last year's tax levy. Next slide. This just talks a little bit about recoupment, so it's in the packet if anybody wants to read it. It's the first time I've done it in my career for 25 years, but it really is just like amending your individual tax return from prior years. And I think that's my last, so this is the other slide. We also have to, besides setting it by class, we have to set it by fund. School districts operate on a fund basis, and this is how we will divide our revenue by fund. General and teacher are really operating funds. Capital projects is what we use for our facilities, and then the debt service, as I said, hasn't been changed for many years at that 83 cents. Next slide. And that's what I have, unless anybody has any questions.
I do.
Okay.
And I'm so sorry I didn't ask this prior to
No,
this.
that's fine.
So it's going to seem like I'm putting you on the spot, but I think
no.
we do a phenomenal job with the money that we have. And what you said earlier was that we were the lowest in the state of Missouri.
Oh, not Missouri, it's St. Louis County.
Okay, St. Louis
Yep,
County.
Sorry.
That's
if I said that.
okay. That's what I
If
want
I
to
said
check
that,
on
I
that.
was wrong, I'll retract
No.
that. St. Louis County.
But I tell you what, I love seeing that.
Yep.
So if we can
There's
get
not
a little-
many there's still not many in Missouri that are at 275. It's a very rare thing.
Yeah,
Yep.
but I love that on that like Excel spreadsheet or Google sheet, whichever one, just to see that, because
Yep.
again,
I
lots
actually
of- yeah.
sent that to our cabinet team. Of course, the rates are not set for next year, but last year it was verified, so I will send that up to the
Yeah.
board.
It's excellent, yeah, we do great
It's
stuff
surprising
with
the
money.
rates that other districts have where we're at, so.
Thank you.
Any
Thank
other
you.
questions? Okay, thank you, Joelle. And at this time, is there anyone in the audience who wishes to come forward to address the Board of Education regarding the proposed tax rate? All right, hearing none, we will move to adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn Special Board of Education Meeting 1560?
So moved.
Motion by Kathy,
Second.
Second by Matt. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Board meeting 1560 is adjourned. Do I have to do this again? All right. And now we will move to our regular we will now move on to our regular Board of Education meeting 1561. And the meeting is now called to order. Dr. Lake, do we have any changes to the agenda?
We do not.
Approval of agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Motion by Mike,
Second?
second by Kathy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Okay, and now we will stand for our Pledge of Allegiance, and we would like to ask our special recognition sparing students to come forward, Nathan and Sarah, to lead us in the pledge. You can just stand here and you can look at the crowd. As I mentioned, we are recognizing Sparing Middle School tonight, so I will turn it over to Dr. Lauren Boger, principal of Sparing Middle School, to present our recognitions.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to our special recognition for Sparing this evening. Tonight, we are going to start by recognizing two of our outstanding 8th grade students at Sparing Middle School. First, please give it up for Nate Priditon. Please come up. Nate was nominated by his teachers and administrators for outstanding take flight mindset at Sparing Middle School. Nate, I want to let you speak because your voice matters to us. So tell us a little bit about what you'd like to say this evening.
Thank you so much. I'm really thankful to all of the teachers, staff, and administrators who have helped me through these years in school. I really am so thankful to be part of this district, and I look forward to coming to the high school next year. One of my favorite classes in particular is band. Just playing music and everything, it really excites me and gives me up out of bed. But yeah, I'm so thankful for everything that everyone's ever taught me, and I hope to move it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Nate. Congratulations. We have something for you.
So we have a certificate for you here. That's yours. And then we have a shirt for you as well. And then we're going to get a quick picture.
Yes, and Nate is joined by his family this evening as well, Priditon family. Thanks for being here.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Nate. Next up, Sarah Munene. Give it up for Sarah. Congratulations. Sarah was also nominated by her teachers and administrators for demonstrating the Take Flight mindset at Sparing Middle School as an outstanding 8th grader. Sarah, can you tell us a little bit about your experience at Sparing?
Yeah, I would like to thank my family and teachers and everyone who made it possible for me to receive this award. Through Lindbergh, I've been able to grow as a leader, an advocate, and as a friend, doing things like being on flight crew and helping out 6th graders, and even small group roles, and even just like a silent classroom when no one's willing to answer questions have pushed me to answer and to step up. When school was virtual, I had to learn to be a self-advocate and that it was okay to ask questions, and it's always a safe environment to do so. And through the many clubs and activities offered, I've been able to meet new people, make new friends, and explore different things that I like. And overall, I really feel Sparing is a place where I belong.
Great job, Sarah. Here is the certificate for you as well. And we also have a t-shirt. You can never have enough Lindbergh gear, right? There you go.
Thank you, Sarah. Next up, we would like to honor our support staff of the year, Mr. Logan Hofius. Come on up, Logan. All right, so a little bit about Logan. He is a former Sperring Flyer and a Lindbergh High School Flyer. Logan was a co-founder of Co-Pilot at the high school. If you don't know what that was a student-led tech help center. So I was so fortunate when I saw his name apply for a building tech position his first year straight out of high school, and he has just been outstanding. And I knew right away that someone up here at Central Office was going to come down and swoop him up, and he has even gotten a promotion. So congratulations for everything you've done. You want to say anything?
Sure. I know I'm not really at Sperring anymore, but I'm over here now. But Sperring's a great place. Students, staffs, administrators are awesome. Going in every day, there was no decision, had to go. It was awesome. I loved every minute at Sperring, and I'm thankful that I get to go there every day still, now that they've pulled me away, but I'm back. So really thankful for all the students. You guys are awesome with coming up with tech stuff, and all the staff is awesome to deal with too. So really appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, Logan. You'll always be our tech wizard. That's his title.
Logan, we have a certificate for you, and we also have a $25 gift card. You probably have a lot of Lindbergh gear, being an alum, but you can never have too much. So there's $25 to our online store.
Thank you, Logan. And also, this evening, please give it up for our Teacher of the Year at Sperring Middle School, Mr. Kevin Ratliff. Come on up, Kevin! So a little bit about Kevin. He teaches 6th grade social studies on 6 Gold, and he also taught both Sarah and Nate. So seeing his former students has been really cool for Kevin. Kevin likes when I embarrass him with the microphone or come in with presents and things like that to honor him live on Facebook. But Kevin has been with us for 10 years. He was a Mizzou Fellow prior to that, and some of the outstanding things he does for us. He coaches basketball for us, and he also coaches golf at the high school, both boys and girls, correct? So Kevin has been outstanding, hands down. The kids love the excitement and energy that you bring to Sperring, and we're just so lucky to have you.
Cool. Thank you, Dr. Boger. I appreciate it. As always, it's humbling in the building that I teach in. There's so many awesome teachers that make me look better every day, and I get great students like Sarah and Nate who make me look awesome too. So I appreciate it, and it often feels undeserved, but thank you so much, and looking forward to another good year. Cool. Thank you, Dr. Boger.
Certificate, and you also get a $25 gift certificate to our online store. All right, and that's going to make us. You need
Thank you all, and I also forgot to mention that we also have families in the room that came, so the Menene family, thank you for being here, the Hofius family, and also Alice, Mr. Ratliff's wife. So thank you all for making Sperring such a wonderful place and where we all belong.
Thank you, Dr. Boger, and we'll take a few minutes if our honorees don't want to stay for the rest of our board meeting, the business portion. We take a few minutes so you can leave peacefully. So.
Yeah, that's your sign to go. Run.
Adoption of the proposed 2022 tax rate. Preceding this regular board meeting, we held our special hearing on the tax rates for 2022, where Joelle Scheibel presented the 2022 proposed tax rates, and citizens were given the opportunity to come forward and address the board regarding those proposed tax rates. It is now time to vote on the adoption of the proposed 2022 tax rates. Do I have a motion to approve the proposed 2022 tax rates as presented?
So moved.
Motion by Julia,
Second.
second by Kathy. Any questions? All right, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0. 6.0 citizen communication regarding agenda items. There are none this evening. We will move to 7.0 communications, calendar of events. Ms. Watts.
All righty, I'm filling in this morning, or this evening. What time is it? I don't even know. A very exciting week for Lindbergh. This is our homecoming week. So tomorrow night, we have our homecoming parade, which begins at 4:30. And following that at 7 is our homecoming football game against Pattonville. So we're hoping for a win there. On the 23rd, mark your calendars because there's no school. And then, he's being very shy about it, but Dr. Lake is on his listening and learning tour. And so he will be, let's see, he's doing it with the staff on September 27th. And then he's going to be at Kennerly on October 11th. And Bering on October 17th. And I think that's all I have on here. And October 7th, I think I said that too. So anyway, you can catch him. Just look at the district calendar if you want to hear what he has to say. And share your opinions with him as well. October 1st marks National Bullying and Prevention Month, and as well as National Principal Month. So thank your principal. Custodian Day is October 3rd. And we are going to have a board meet and greet also on October 3rd, but we'll do that in a little bit. You'll hear details about that. And so for the board, we have a lot of coffees. We're going to be drinking a lot of coffee this month. And we have a clergy coffee on the 6th, an elected officials coffee on the 7th. And we have former Board of Education on the 13th. And then the community breakfast on the 14th. So lots of coffee for us. Let's see what else is on my agenda here. You guys are already tired, aren't you? The fall play starts October 13th, and the title is Noises Off. So I'm not sure what that is, but the play is always outstanding. And then our next Board of Education meeting is Tuesday, October 18th. We'll have a board workshop in front of that, so we'll start at 4:30. And you are all welcome to join us.
Thank you. Item 7.02, report of meetings. Has anyone participated in any state or other meetings or parent group meetings? I know our parent leadership meetings started and a few of us were there this week.
Just really sports events.
Yes.
We had Powder Puff the other night, and I gotta tell you, those girls did a good job playing flag football. So,
We will move to 7.03, announcements.
okay, so announcing the Board of Education Community Meet and Greet will start at 6 p.m. on Monday, October 3rd. It will be hosted here, and we invite families, staff, and community members to attend. It's going to be informal. We're not going to be behind the desk. We're going to be mingling with you. This will be open house style. And the purpose is to provide you with the opportunity to get to know us as board members, have conversations, and share feedback that you want to share with us. This was born from Jen and Julia during their school board election, and many people said, we can't talk to the board, we don't know how to talk to the board, how do we approach them? And so here you go. Here's your meet and greet, Monday, October 3rd.
Thanks. And then 7.04, review of upcoming Board of Education meeting agendas.
Okay, so as I said, October 18th is our board workshop at 4:30, and then we will follow with our regular meeting. Our regular meeting will have the second reading of the 23-24 school calendar, which I was shocked when that popped up. We're already talking next year. Approval of transportation routes, report of record reports on professional learning plan, and early childhood education evaluation, and our usual human resource reports, financial reports, and our school of choice for recognition is Crestwood Elementary.
Thank you. There are no Board of Education member appointments this evening, so we will move to our MSBA board report for September.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Missouri School Boards Association's Board Report for the month of September. We thank you for the opportunity to share some news and information during a few minutes of your board meeting. We begin with a look at the release of this year's state assessment data. The preliminary results released by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education show some improvement over the prior year, but state totals have not yet reached pre-pandemic levels. English language arts had mixed results by grade level. Math and science scores increased in all grades and courses, while social studies showed slight decreases in proficiency. Commissioner of Education Margie Van Dieven had this to say about the results. Districts and charter schools across the state continued to face unique challenges during the 21-22 school year, while working hard to focus on the well-being and academic success of students. Nothing about this past school year was typical. We must remain vigilant in educating our students, and I urge everyone to review the data through an informational lens, using these key takeaways to shape how state and local resources are best deployed to support ongoing student success. The COVID-19 pandemic continued to cause learning disruptions, periods of quarantine, and chronic absenteeism of both students and staff during the past year. Meanwhile, the state's Blue Ribbon Commission, charged with developing strategies to address teacher recruitment and retention challenges in Missouri, is continuing its work. The commission held a public hearing in August to gather input on teacher shortage issues. Among those testifying before the commission was Tipton art teacher and Pettis County R12 school board member Sean Harris.
Salaries are so low that new and veteran teachers are having to find, oftentimes, not always, a second job in order to make ends meet, in order to support themselves or their families. In April of this year, a survey came out and found Missouri was 50th out of 50 states when it came to teacher salaries and pay. Because of that, we are seeing people leave this field. We are seeing people not enter this field because of low pay. It's difficult to find substitutes when teachers leave and fill those gaps that need to be filled. Sometimes when those teachers find a second job, after a long day of working, they go to their second job, which takes away from time with their family, takes away time from themselves to have the opportunity to wind down, and that's not fair.
A statewide survey of Missouri teachers, principals, and superintendents conducted by the commission showed strong support for increasing the base salary for teachers, for wellness days, and for student loan forgiveness. The Blue Ribbon Commission is scheduled to present its recommendations to the State Board of Education in October. There's still time to register for the 2022 MSBA Annual Conference in cooperation with the Missouri Association of School Administrators to be held in Kansas City November 3rd through 5th. This year's conference will include 3 general sessions, including keynote speaker Olympian Jackie Joyner-Kersee, more than 90 concurrent sessions, a one-day education expo, and much more. Registration information is available on the MSBA website. You also can register to attend the 2022 Midwest School Safety Summit to be held November 2nd and 3rd in Kansas City. This event is designed to provide information for those who govern and work in K-12 schools, colleges, and universities, as well as law enforcement officials and others working with MSBA member districts. The Midwest School Safety Summit is presented by MSBA's Center for Education Safety and the Safe and Sound Schools organization. On a personal note, this is my final board report program as I am retiring from MSBA after 35 years. It has been an honor to work for such an outstanding organization and to support the work of school boards and school board members throughout the state. And so, thanks for allowing me to share some time at your board meeting, and so long from Columbia.
Thank you, Colin. We'll move to 8.01 cabinet updates, and we'll start with Dr. McKinney with HR.
Thank you. Well, our committee did not meet this month, but we did an online sharing of the personnel report, which was reviewed by all members. We'll meet in October as scheduled.
Thank you. And then we'll move to Joelle for finance and facilities.
Finance, the topic was the tax rate, so the Finance Committee spent an hour on that, pretty much, and then went over the finances that are reported every month to the board. We go over the payments and the payroll and things like that. So Facilities has not met yet. That will meet next month. Looking forward to it.
Thank you. And then Dr. Sparks for teaching and learning, technology, and student life.
First of all, I want to say it was really exciting with this round of board advisories. We have a significant number of students on our board advisories. In fact, we had more students apply than we had room for, so that's exciting to see students who want to get engaged at that level. Our technology board advisory, we really focused on how we communicate through technology, and our technology board advisory actually had some tasks that they had to navigate. We gave them things to look for on our district website, and then they gave us feedback about user friendliness, what they needed, and some really good tips for how we can improve the functionality of how we communicate that way. Teaching and learning met earlier this week, and like all of our board advisories right now, half of the members are new, so we really spend some time kind of regrouping who are the new members, who are all of the members on the advisories, and then kind of what's the work we've done in the past, what's the work we're doing for the future, and so that was a part of each of those meetings. And then in teaching and learning, we spent some time really having conversations, clarifying things like what is the curriculum cycle, what do we mean by resources, how do we keep continuity among 6 elementary schools and 2 middle schools. So answering a lot of questions and then designating some hot topics and things that they would like to investigate and discuss throughout the course of the year. And then student life, as you are aware, we have our social emotional learning screeners that are going to begin in October, so really spent some time reflecting on the communication that was going out with regard to those screeners and what we need in order to make that process successful.
Thank you. We'll move back to Dr. McKinney to begin our HR innovations presentation.
Okay. This summer, the district voluntarily underwent a human resources process audit. The audit was focused on several policies, namely AC, prohibition against illegal discrimination, harassment and retaliation, ACA, sexual harassment under Title IX, GBCB, staff conduct, GBH, staff-student relations, and GBM, staff grievances. The district engaged HR Innovations LLC to conduct the independent evaluation and audit of all processes, investigation procedures, and handling of these cases. Here tonight to summarize the findings from the audit is Ken Brosix, President of HR Innovations, and I'll turn it over to Ken at this time.
See, I'm a little out of practice with all this. I retired from HR about 3 years ago, so you'll have to bear with me as I get the wheels back for the board presentation again. As Dr. McKinney said, he approached me in June to do an audit around the different policies, specifically around compliance issues as it relates to policy AC and policy ACA mainly are in there. And are you my cue person for the next slide? Let's see. And you're really testing me, so I refuse to get progressive lenses. So it's for the near, and you have a screen over there that I don't need the glasses for. So I look like this at you all the time. I'm not giving you the evil eye. I apologize. And I take my glasses off, so bear with me as I go through that. It's just my idiosyncrasies. So just a little background. Since I've retired, I do a lot of consulting work, actually mainly for your school district attorneys, which I believe to with Keeney. And I'm usually not here in open session with the Board of Education. Unfortunately, most of my work is with actually investigations under policy AC and ACA. So I just want to say it's a pleasure here to come and present these findings to you today. I just want to back up a second too and say that Dr. McKinney and his HR staff, and actually everybody that assisted me, I requested a lot of information that's on a slide later that we'll get to. We're very accommodating. I mean, very gracious, very hosting, very open, and wanted me to see everything, really, the A to Z about what's going on so that I can make some recommendations and reports. So I just wanted to note that for you as we go through. I believe Dr. McKinney already mentioned The main policies that I looked at, the district policies, Policy AC, which is specifically the prohibition against illegal discrimination, harassment, and retaliation. Policy ACA, which is sexual harassment under Title IX. And then that crossed over into some G policies, which are the personnel policies for the district. GBH, the main one, staff-student relations. And then, of course, staff conduct, which is GBCB, and staff grievances, GBM, as you see there. Next slide, if you don't mind. Here is the slide about all the information that I requested, all right? As part of the policy, the findings that we'll get to in a moment, one of the main things that I did around Policy AC and ACA, they have required training. And so I looked at a lot of the trainings that you have, the annual mandatory trainings, you might have heard that term, annual mandatory trainings. If there's any staff in the room, they love the annual mandatory trainings, I'm sure. And so I looked at that for compliance issues and whether it was actually meeting the training requirements that we'll get to in a moment. All other kinds of trainings, like staff meetings, whether at the building level or the district level. And so Dr. McKinney was very gracious in giving me all that information so I could see agendas and all sorts of things that were going on at various different meetings, teacher meetings, administrator meetings, etc. Okay. The handbooks, right? Everybody has handbooks. Different staff groups have handbooks. I looked at all those handbooks for compliance and consistency. So that was part of all of that. And then, of course, under Policy AC and Policy ACA specifically, there is a grievance policy, a grievance procedure. So if someone feels like there's some kind of discrimination or harassment issue, they file a formal grievance. And so there have been formal grievances that have been filed in the past, and Dr. McKinney was kind enough to show me all of that information as well so I could see what the practices are and procedures and how that conforms to the written policies and procedures. Okay. I also interviewed district administrators, and this happened in July, and so Dr. McKinney was very gracious to find some building administrators for me to interview, and so we'll get to that later. One of the big items I just want to point, I got a big star on my outline here, is that last item in bold there that you can see. And I'll just read it. This is just my opinion. Everything that you see in italics in these presentations, by the way, is just my opinion from the findings in there. And so I just want to note that the fact the district, Dr. McKinney and Dr. Lake, as the administrators specifically that contacted me, that they wanted an outside independent audit related to current practices and procedures surrounding typically delicate and sensitive areas demonstrates a desire to provide a safe and productive environment for all stakeholders. You're going to notice that kind of as a theme as we go through here. Lindbergh is just as I found through here. Lindbergh, the administrators are doing a very commendable job as it relates to all this. And so as we go through here, I just want to point that out as well. Next slide. Okay. Now, this is the bread and butter, so to speak, right? What are the findings? What are my recommendations? So first, I just want to run through really quick the policy pieces, right? So Policy AC, this is one of those required training pieces in there. You see on the slide the big training session. This one is for all staff, all employees of the district have a training requirement under Policy AC. So what then did I find as it relates to that? Next slide, please. So here are just some specific recommendations that I made as I looked at the mandatory annual trainings, which by and large is meets the requirement for Policy AC. A lot of the annual trainings centered around sexual harassment, sexual abuse, and use those terms in the trainings. Policy AC is a little broader than just sexual harassment. It's harassment in general, it's discrimination, and it's retaliation. And so one of the recommendations there would be just to note those broadening in some of the trainings. Provide the consequences in the training, although I didn't read that paragraph, right, about the training in there. It says that the staff, employees should know the consequences under Policy AC. And so that's not really, I didn't see any of that in the mandatory training. So as one piece to include. And then the complaint procedure, have an official grievance form. Would be a recommendation there. There's lots of ways, lots of people submit things, email, that would be kind of an official thing that you would have to act on regardless, but having an official form, so to speak, might be a good idea as it relates to that. And then the final part down there, which I know Dr. McKinney has already been working on as we were kind of going through things, I know he was working on this piece, is to have investigator, mainly the investigators under policy AC would be the administrators, right, the building administrators. And so to have ongoing training just to make sure everyone's on the same page with how to conduct things and communicate and all of that. Next slide, please. Next big policy, ACA. This is the Title IX compliance policy. Just as a note, Title IX, right, is from the federal guidelines, and it seems to change on a fairly regular basis. This is actually a newer policy just in the last few years. You've probably already had 2 or 3 different changes in it, recommended changes by your policy provider, MSBA. And so the training piece here in Policy ACA basically focuses on those people identified in the process of Policy ACA. So you can see up there, those would be the coordinators, right, the Title IX coordinator, the investigators, decision makers. It's a long policy that names the duties of all that, and so that's what the training centers are on for ACA. Next slide, please. And so what are the recommendations around ACA? That would be none, right? The annual mandatory trainings that exist address policy ACA and Title IX very well. So I didn't really have any recommendations there outside of just keeping that updated as the moving target that we call Title IX advances along. Next slide, please. Policy GBH, this is staff-student relations. This is the title of this policy, and you can see there's a training requirement here as well. The recommendation here, again, the training pretty much addresses that requirement. The annual mandatory training pretty much addresses that requirement. Just here, there happens to be a specific term that's used, that's referenced between policies, it's sexual abuse. And just to note that term to be consistent between the policies with the definitions there. Would be the only recommendation that I could find as it related to that. Next slide, please. This is just a slide that captures some of the additional trainings I referenced that Dr. McKinney provided me information on. And in all these trainings here, this is, as the next slide says, this is above and beyond what the annual mandatory requirement is. Now, just as a note, I go in a lot of school districts, been in a lot of school districts across the state, actually looking at various things like this. Lindbergh is unique in the fact that you go way above and beyond the training requirements as it relates to Policy AC and Policy ACA awareness. Okay. Next slide, please. Reference there. So specific recommendations as it relates to all that would be just to make sure that there's consistent information all to every group and that it's consistent across all the different policies. Note the general complaint procedures. Obviously, anybody can go to the policy and see the general complaint procedures, but it might be worthwhile to summarize that, especially as it relates to the staff. Designated coordinators, there was a very good job accomplished about identifying the Title IX compliance coordinator, but not the policy AC coordinator, which actually happens to be from the staff and student perspective, both the same person. But just noting that in there might be good about who to contact, especially for policy AC. Okay. And then again, we already mentioned this, just to repeat, identifying the consequences for violating the policies in a very overt way. Okay. Next slide, please. Handbooks that I looked at on this slide. Next one, please. Recommendations for handbooks. This looks like a lot, and this looks like the handbooks might be terrible if you just look at this. That's not the case. It's kind of just a repeat of some of the other recommendations. Just consistency across there. Make sure all different employee and support staff groups have handbooks. A coach sponsor specific handbook, especially for out-of-district coaches. One of the big things I've seen in the last couple of years is the coaching, the activities, the extracurricular activities, especially as it relates to policy ACA, which is the Title IX compliance. So just having something there would be good to help head that off. Again, same information in there, coordinators, complaint procedures, etc. One of the recommendations I made on here, as you can see at the end, is to have your handbooks actively accepted by the different employee groups and the different employees every year. It kind of gets away from the idea that, say, well, handbook, what handbook? So to accomplish that would be one of the big recommendations here. Next slide, please. Administrator interviews. I just want to, again, commend, I was very impressed, right, with the administrators, and I don't say that lightly. Dr. McKinney kind of knows me from my HR days, right, and I don't hand out compliments like candy. So when I say I was impressed, that says something, so you should be proud of that as a district. The building administrators seemed very competent and very skilled at doing investigations and collaborating. They were very complimentary of the district level staff that they reported to, supervisors that they had an issue they went to, and they collaboratively worked it out. And so I just wanted to note that here in the presentation. Next slide, please. So recommendations, as I was getting information and quizzing the building administrators, who were very gracious to come in and give up some of their summer days at the buildings. Again, just the training piece to make sure all the administrators are on the same page, especially for new administrators that come in the district. That's the bottom bullet there. And these are just really kind of very proactive things. And I know Dr. McKinney is very interested in being as proactive as possible. So create an investigation documentation protocol and checklist, kind of just that things, okay, I have a formal complaint or even an informal complaint. What do I do? What are the things to do? Who should I contact? What should I do? As a building administrator would be one of the recommendations here on this one. Also, at the very bottom one there, at that little paragraph, you'll see a little note about Children's Division. So all school district employees are mandated reporters under the law. So if they see some issue, they actually have to report it to Children's Division. They call it the hotline call, right? And so over time, and the annual mandatory trainings, that piece is very clear. There's a whole mandated reporting piece that all the staff sees. But just to go over that and make sure everyone's on the same page on a, not necessarily an annual basis, but maybe in person at staff meetings too, would be a recommendation I would have there. Next slide, please. This is just a little piece about those prior formal complaints that were received by the district. They date it back to 2009 to the present. Just want to note a couple of items here. So a couple of those that actually information was received by the district about complaints from 20 and 25 years ago. And so in my experience, right, looking at school districts, many school districts would say, what do you want me to do with that? Right, 20 and 25. I mean, the person or the issue is so old, like who can I even find? Like most staff members would be retired, not all, but maybe some of them. And I just want to note for you that all of that was taken immensely seriously by the district and investigated even 25 years in the past to the extent possible. And that was very clear as I went through the documents and the investigation files and all of that. And so I just wanted to note that I don't know of very many human resource people in school districts that would go through that level of scrutiny for a 25-year-old report. Okay. Next slide. And so the general recommendation there, I don't really have any other than maybe just having kind of specific and set documentation as you go through it. In other words, there's a formal complaint, what's kind of the intake? All that kind of, from a staff perspective, goes through human resources, or for a student perspective, might go through the academics side, right? And so just kind of having a set thing there, that way it's consistent across the district. Again, that's a very proactive thing. Next slide. Conclusions. Well, these are more accolades, time for more accolades. I found that very collaborative. There's an issue, concern that comes up, it's taken seriously, number one. Number two, it's investigated immediately and in a timely manner and very collaboratively from the building level to the district level. One of the better districts I've seen in regards to all of that, how they handle that, how they take it seriously, how they process that, and the recommendations and things that I made would just, again, take you to the kind of that proactive place But I just want to say that, again, I was very impressed with what I saw and how things operate in the school district. And I will just close there and take any questions you might have.
Anyone? Okay, well, thank you.
Anyone? No questions? Are you? Let me off the, well, I don't, like I said, don't take that lightly. You're doing a very good job as it relates to this and keeping students and staff safe, which is the bottom line of those policies, right?
So actually, I do have one.
Sure.
You mentioned for policy AC that we should list the consequences. That says you should be aware of what they are, but it wasn't listed what they are. Were the consequences listed in the handbooks?
No.
Okay.
No, to be consistent and put those in the handbooks and make them aware, even in the annual mandatory trainings too, would be a recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Any other questions? No, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
We will move to 9.0, action items by consent. We have action items by consent 9.01 to 9.08. Would anyone want to remove any of these items for individual consideration? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve consent items 9.01 to 9.08?
So moved.
Motion by Christie,
Second.
second by Matt. Are there any questions or discussion? All right, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0. We have no individual action items tonight. We'll move to 11.01 for the record. We have one for the record report this evening, the first reading of the 2023-2024 school calendar. You can review this and contact Dr. Sparks with any questions, and it will return at next month's meeting seeking approval. 11.02 other reports. We have one this evening, our SSD partnership presentation by Dr. Joyce Doyle.
So as Dr. Doyle comes up, I just want to remind everyone how our leadership within Lindbergh for special education has changed within the last year. Dr. Doyle's first year within Lindbergh was last year as SSD, prioritizing ensuring that there was one director in every school district. So it's been a great partnership and excited to hear what she has to say about it.
All right, let's try that now. All right, so forever a teacher at heart, when I saw where I was in the agenda, I decided I needed to make sure that I had engaged everybody in the room. So what I'd like to do first is to get a finger on the pulse. How many of you in the room, like me, still read the weekend newspaper? So whether it's an online version or a hard copy version, you still read? Okay, so if you did, you may have read in a recent edition this little exercise that I'm going to ask you to participate in. So if you will, right now, please turn up the corners of your mouth. If you will, turn up the corners of your mouth, and there it is, it's happening. And you might already know the brain science behind that. It's not about the smile itself, but even the action of the muscles in your face doing that creates some kind of a chemical change in your brain, and it can actually bolster your mood. So here we are approaching 8 o'clock on a work night, and I think the energy in the room is already increasing, okay? And so keep that smile on your face as I share some really, I think, outstanding information about the partnership and the collaboration between Lindbergh School District and Special School District. Slide. So I wanted to start with a little bit of data, kind of that balcony view, so that you understand something about at the end of last school year. So this data is, I believe, from May of 21-22. There were approximately 1,309 Lindbergh students, that's almost 17% of the Lindbergh population, that were receiving special education services. So how does that break down? Well, almost 1,200 of those students actually attend Lindbergh schools between kindergarten and 12th grade. That would be my staff who's supporting them. They're receiving services. Who would my staff be? Well, you know, teachers, and we've got paraprofessionals. You may also be aware that we have occupational therapists, music therapists, physical therapists, ABA associates. We have social workers, we have school psychologists, we have adaptive PE teachers. I'm sure I am leaving out many very significant people on my staff, but I did want you to have a little bit of a feel for who all Special School District brings in to support our students. Beyond those nearly 1,200 students who are in the school with an IEP, we have 25 students who are Lindbergh students who are in a more restrictive placement. We call that separate public, because their needs for special education cannot be met here in their comprehensive homeschool. At this point in time, my hope is always to bring all of our kids back to their home school, but that means we have students who might be receiving their instruction right now at Southview or at Bridges. And then that little number 94 that you see, that represents our students who might be homeschooled or in private school, but they still have special education needs, and so through an individual services plan, they receive special education through SNAP. You might also be aware that Special School District can provide homebound services. So what I think of might be our students who have an IEP and maybe they get suspended. How do we ensure that after their 10th day out that they are still accessing education? SSD has homebound. Or maybe there are students who receive it through medical homebound. So they have an authorization either through intermittent homebound services or for a certain period of time. We also have our courts program. So when a student with an IEP might have a little issue with the law and be involved with the court system, we still need to ensure that they're receiving their education. And then the last category there is the early childhood program. So Special School District partners with Lindbergh's early childhood program to provide services for those students who are between ages 3 and 5. And as I might mention on another slide, so those students might come in and actually have a special ed eligibility, or they might come in as a young child with developmental delay, and hopefully they can be bolstered with some services, and by the time they're age 5 and in kindergarten, if they get an evaluation, or maybe they won't even need an evaluation, to qualify for special education services because they've already kind of caught back up. And then the last area that we're talking about there, 117 students last year in the Lindbergh School District were able to take advantage of our South County Tech. That's our career technical education program. Phenomenal, and it is not required that you have an IEP to take advantage of that. As a matter of fact, most of the students who participate in South Tech do not have an IEP. Slide. I have a feeling that I'm going to be running over my 10-minute allocation, so I'll do what I can. So again, by the numbers, I am not going to be able to see that. Can I? Or I won't report out on the percentages. My vision's just not quite that good from here. But to know, how about those 1,200 kids who have an IEP? How does it break down in those disability areas? So you can read the percentages from the top. Our autism students, students with emotional disturbance, language impairment, the low incident programs, you might not be aware of what that means, but that would be our students who have a visual impairment, or maybe they're deaf, hard of hearing, or orthopedically impaired. We have other health impairment, which most frequently that number represents the students who do have attention deficit disorder, but there are other areas that could fall under that category as well. We have specific learning disabilities, so you might be more familiar with a disability in basic reading or written expression or math computation, for example. We have students with a speech who receive speech services from our speech language pathologist. And then there's that young child with developmental delay that I mentioned earlier. So those would be our students ages 3 to 5 in the early childhood program or in kindergarten who don't have a school age diagnosis yet. And then that last category called other, I think that was about 53 students, and that meant at the snapshot of this data, we had 53 students who were either like in the process of getting an evaluation, So they hadn't qualified yet, and if they did, we don't know what category they were going to fall into. Or maybe it was a transfer IEP, because throughout the year, we do get students coming in from other districts, from other states with an IEP, and we have a little bit of time to kind of process that IEP before we write our own or accept that IEP. Slide. So let me focus now on that thing called the partnership agreement, which you might be aware that every year it's asked that the special school district and the partner district, so be it Lindbergh or any of the 22 districts in St. Louis County, is asked to sign. And what's the purpose? Well, really the heart of it is to provide a document that's really going to support our collaboration in 7 important areas, and then to allow us an opportunity at the end of the year to get together and kind of self-assess, to reflect on where our strengths have been and what our focus areas are going to be for the upcoming year. Slide. Okay, so just as I mentioned, there's our purpose and there's the 7 areas that our partnership agreement reflects on. Some additions for this year, what was determined the agreement should be tweaked a little bit. We wanted to make sure that there was a focus on some directed time to collaborate between administrators around administrator performance review. So making sure that we have an opportunity that my liaison, Dr. Lawson, and I, that the building principals and my coordinators are really able to kind of give input, feedback into administrator performance review. We were looking to examine the processes for how we provide, or how Lindbergh actually provides technology and space for special school district staff and for Lindbergh students who are receiving services. And then, especially in this climate of labor shortage, to look at staff retention considerations. In another category, it was determined that SSD district goal plans needed to be sure and have goals in the areas of literacy, numeracy, and staff engagement and climate. Well, we were ahead of the game there, because when I came on board last year, Dr. Lawson and I worked together, and I said, I have to have a literacy goal because I need to be able to monitor. I have to have a numeracy goal, so I'm monitoring what's going on within our buildings. And then this year, the staff engagement and climate goal, that concept came out of really the surveys that we're doing for staff. I'm sure you're well aware, especially since you're reading the paper, just like I am, that so many educators, especially special educators across the country, that we're really concerned about their well-being. And so looking at writing a goal that we can measure and focus on making sure that we're supporting them. And then the last thing that you see on the slide is a 2-year goal that I wrote last year, really looking at family engagement and communication, because I thought it was really important when I came into the district that I really learn and make myself available and listen to Lindbergh staff, SSD staff, and our families to find out what they were needing. Slide. Another addition to the partnership agreement was the expectation that the director and the coordinators would attend the Parent Advisory Council in partner districts. Well, again, we had that. Absolutely. That was a huge, important feature for me coming in. So as Dr. Lawson and I got together probably August 1st with our one planning committee member for LPAC, and she is steadfast and tremendous, and she remains on the committee. But part of my goal was also to kind of expand that planning committee. And so at this point in time, we actually have 6 parents on our planning committee for LPAC. Last year, we wanted again to listen to what the parents needed, and so a part of what we heard was they want an opportunity to network with other families. Sometimes it can feel rather isolated when you have a student who has an IEP and who has special needs, so we really wanted to make sure that we offered a couple of events that would foster that. We also heard that they wanted to know about what resources were in the community, so we planned an event for that. We had 3 informational presentations last year, and we've got 3 coming up for this year. And then one of our really fantastic events that we did in April, a Saturday morning in April at Concord Elementary School, was what we named our Hope Family and Community Resource Fair. So we had a keynote speaker, we had 19, I'll call it organizations from the community come in, or individuals. We had breakout sessions where families could learn more about topics that they were there to represent, topics like, autism, social skills, guardianships, financial planning, just to name a very few. So I tell you, it was a fantastic event. However, it was not a very well-attended event. We only had 9 families who came to participate. And so we really are looking at, if we're going to do this again this year, we need more feedback, more information. Did it have to do with our inability to really publicize it well enough? Did we not pick a date and time that was good for families, that they were going to be able to access it? I've already had another partner district SSD director reach out to me, kind of like, wow, it sounds so good. Maybe we could partner and work together. So things that are in the works. If you're interested, put on your calendar for September 27th, 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock live here will be our first informational presentation of the year, and that's going to be on executive functioning strategies. So we are promoting this through principal e-notes, through Peach Jar, through my monthly director's newsletter. What our family said in the survey that we sent out to them was, when they get an email from their child's case manager, they open it up. So they might not open the one that says coming from Joy Doyle, but they will open it up if it's coming from their case manager. So we have added that to our teachers' to-do list, is sending out those flyers so that parents are aware of these great things. Another exciting event that we did, and this really was, we had the people present at our back-to-school bash, which we held at Watson Trails Park, a fantastic inclusive playground there, and we can't really swear how many people attended. We did have a sign-up sheet. We know probably most people didn't sign up. I would venture to guess that there was probably about 100 people there. We had Kona Ice. We had made these LPAC magnets, and I got to go around and meet with probably every adult that was there and talk to them and give them this so that they have contact information and website information, because it's just, I think, so essential that people feel connected, so that we establish those relationships so that they really can be heard and we can work together in providing the services that their students need. Slide. Okay, so I mentioned a few minutes ago that through this partnership agreement at the end of each year, it's expected that the liaison director and myself would kind of go through this rubric and do a self-assessment. You can see kind of the scoring guide, and I wasn't so caught up with what number we scored at, but it was really about the conversation then that Dr. Lawson and I had about where we think we're headed and what we think we're really doing well. Slide. So in each of the 7 categories, so first this is the staffing category, and so I really want to highlight some of the strengths, what has changed in this past year regarding staffing, is for this school year, because I asked Special School District, and we have received an additional school psychologist, basically because our evaluation numbers are so high. So we went from 6 to 7 school psychologists, and the second half of last year we were getting a little extra support of a school psychologist from another partner district who was not as highly utilized, and we've got her on board again kind of for those overages, because we need to make sure that we are maintaining compliant timelines, and beyond the compliance issue, we need to make sure that we are being responsive. In addition to that, we added 3 elementary teachers to my staff, meaning it wasn't because of our numbers. It wasn't that we have so many students with IEPs that we needed to have 3 more teachers. It was because I was brought into the district and I was determined to roll out the structured intensive reading program, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. And in order to do that with fidelity and to protect teacher schedules in the elementary schools, I thought it was essential that we got additional staff on board to do that. And so Special School District did provide 3 additional teacher level staff for that. We also got 1 additional paraprofessional, and just to let you know, we have requested a few more just as of Monday of this week. Looking at other areas of focus goes without saying, it's vital that we fill any staff vacancies quickly. I really want to commend my coordinators for that, because this summer, we made it our goal that by June 30th, we will have recommended staff for any vacancies that we had, and really we met that. We then had somebody resign like the first week of July, and then on the first day that staff was back, we had 2 paras resign, and then of course, if you're familiar with the HR process, just because we recommend doesn't necessarily mean that they make it through all of the processes. So we didn't start out the year as intact as it felt like we would be, and that is a real struggle because our children are in our classrooms and we need to be there to meet their needs. You know that securing substitutes is also a struggle. And as I mentioned earlier, in today's climate, we care about our teachers' well-being. We are looking at teacher workload. We think it's very important as administrators to be very visible and to be very supportive in a way that they are asking us to be. And so, of course, collaborating with Lindbergh to look at some staff retention strategies is something we want to do as we move through the year. Slide. Strengths to highlight in student services. So we have something called an Early Intervening Services Grant. I just call it the EIS grant, where Special School District Lindbergh has been given 1 teacher position. And last year, one of my coordinators and the interventionist interventionist coordinator, Maureen Stabler, Dr. Lawson and I kind of tried to be really systematic in how are we going to use this person? How are we going to make sure that she's getting into the buildings? Because the idea is providing this early intervention so that a student might not need special education services. And so she served actually 156 students in some capacity last year. Looking at this year's work for that teacher, she's going to especially be focusing on written expression and encoding. Encoding is spelling, which we know can be a real detractor from your ability to get your ideas on paper if you're struggling to spell. Again, highlighting in the strengths in the reading program, that implementation of the intensive reading program in every elementary. So by that, I'm talking about the Wilson program. When I came on board, we had 4 SSD Lindbergh teachers who were trained to use Wilson, and I have gotten 8 additional staff trained, so we have 12 across the district who are trained to use Wilson. In math, it was also a goal of mine when I think about the students who are being pulled out to receive replacement math services, or really kind of that intensive math because they are more than 2 years below grade level. How are we really providing research-based materials that my teachers are well-trained and feel confident in using to make a difference? Because we did not have that when I came on board last year. And so we did make a major purchase. This summer we did a summer immersion training program for 19 special ed teachers who are implementing that this year. In terms of an area of focus under student services for the coming year, something else that I alluded to earlier that the school psychs have noticed, the principals have noticed, is the number of evaluations and the whole intervention process, and MTSS that Lindbergh is working very diligently on. And so how can we kind of provide a forum for the school psychs, the special ed coordinators, and the building principals to make sure that they have an opportunity to get together. We decided quarterly to really look at their building data on interventions, on eligibilities, the joint review process, so that they were empowered to see what trends, what data to look at in their building, and then to determine what they might do as a next step. Slide. Collaboration of responsibility and resources. So just again, to highlight, looking at a part of our teachers' jobs for special ed is to make sure that their documentation is good and compliant. So I call that quality and compliance. And so wanting to make sure that all of my teachers really know and are focused on great documentation. So we brought SSD teaching level staff back 2 days ahead of Lindbergh staff this year. On their second day back, it was a full-day professional development that the coordinators and I planned for them so that they really are focusing on that IEP quality and compliance piece and that data piece, because we really started looking at data with a professional development last spring. I want to make sure that my staff feel confident in knowing where to source that data, that they can go back to those initial eligibility and reevaluation documents, take that data, take the Lindbergh General Ed data, and make sure that they are progress monitoring and using their own data, and that they can talk with professionalism and expertise to use that data at IEP meetings. And we had another professional development last year also to really help our teachers be very cognizant of making an inclusive environment at those IEP meetings, to make sure that the general ed teachers feel like this really is a space for them to contribute, because we need everybody's input, and to really make sure that our parents feel like they are here to be heard and that they are a significant team member for that IEP team. Just to let you know, I also have my coordinators. We did this last year and again this year. Within the first 30 days of school, they're expected to go to a staff meeting and provide what we might call the special education reboot, a little 30-minute presentation, especially for gen ed staff, but SSD staff should be in the room too, so everybody's hearing the same thing at the same time, to again be reminded what that special ed process is, the evaluation process, the joint review process, why it's important to attend the IEP meetings and be a contributing member. All right, focusing on another highlight, knowing that we were going to really roll out Wilson more broadly this coming school year in the spring, as we were identifying students who would benefit from this more intensive commitment to basic reading instruction. We put together what we call the Wilson Summer Academy. We are collaborating with Lindbergh. Lindbergh has a summertime elementary reading class. I don't know what it's called on the Lindbergh side, but we then were able to invite students who have IEPs and who were needing more intensive reading support. They could participate in that half-day Lindbergh reading program and then be pulled out for a portion of that day, like a 45-minute time slot, to learn how to be a Wilson student. And so if you know anything about Wilson, there's certain strategies that's used, like tapping and scooping. And so it was really kind of to build some excitement and motivation around that, to get some Wilson leaders so that when they would come back into the Wilson groups at the beginning of this year, it was going to be an exciting thing, an empowering thing for our kids. And then another strength that we focused on was, again, we heard from parents at that initial survey that we took, and we also heard from gen ed teachers at the start of last year that a lot of kindergarten students were coming in and having lots of difficulty. And I could say, maybe it had something to do with the pandemic, lack of exposure, but bottom line, there were a lot of kindergartners who came in with an IEP, and staff didn't feel necessarily ready or like we had all the resources that we needed. And so we really looked to focus on that transition process last year. And I do believe we improved that process. And so an area of focus for this upcoming year is to look at what kind of systems we want to have in place for those other building transitions. When your student with an IEP transitions from elementary school to middle school to high school, because we know not only is it a big deal for the student, but it's a big deal for mom and dad. And we want to make sure that we are setting up kind of a trusting communication relationship before that student with the IEP even crosses over to the next building. So we're looking at how we might better do that this coming year. Slide. Data and technology. So as you may already know, Lindbergh provides the technology devices to all SSD teacher level staff, and then SSD pays them back for it. This is a strength in that all of my staff then can seamlessly interface with any of the Lindbergh technology, and they are on par with what the Lindbergh staff have. Now, an area of focus, what I came to realize as we were nearing the end of the year, is because Lindbergh has so many great, in each building, you've got maybe a tech lab or a place for technology and somebody there who supports it, that if one of my staff was turning in a device for whatever reason, it could have been like 12 different places that they were turning it in. It could have gone to SSD central office, it could have gone with their coordinator, it could have come here. And so we really don't have a great way of inventorying and keeping track of those devices. And so Lindbergh, my secretary, and I are working to improve that process for the coming year. Slide. Okay, the last two categories, transportation. Really just to highlight that you may know that transportation can be a related service on a student's IEP if the team determines that that's something that they need in order to access their education. And so there were, when I pulled this report, I think about a week ago, 56 students in Lindbergh that SSD provides their transportation for. And then again, to repeat, that last category is career and technical education. So last year, 117 Lindbergh students were able to take advantage of the South County Tech programs. Slide. So I talked about this is the partnership agreement. So really, why are we doing it and what are we doing when we sign it? It's endorsing the vision, mission, and beliefs set out in the document. It's agreeing that we are together collaborating and supporting the shared responsibility for our students, and that we understand that this document can help guide our collaborative efforts. And finally, we sign because we are committing to work cooperatively to implement those principles. Slide. So really, I do want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, but not for me so much, but for my staff, because it really is my staff who are so hardworking. I cannot tell you the challenges, you may know challenges in education and the challenges in special education, and my staff get up and they come every day to work, and I appreciate them. I want you to continue to appreciate them and to continue to support especially those students that we share between Lindbergh and Special School District. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Are there any questions? And then
Yes, one question. I did notice I'm echoing. I did notice the changes in the agreement, and I think that the parents will welcome the additional cooperation and collaboration that are in there. I think I'm looking forward to see how that plays out. One of the areas of focus that she mentioned was improving having substitutes available. And so I was wondering what that's looking like this year, because I've heard it's hard to find subs for special.
It is. It continues to be a real struggle. In Special School District, in the end of February last year, we changed the company that was providing that, and I do think initially I did see an upswing, that we were getting some more nibbles, we were getting more people in the building, and in the last 3.5 weeks, not so much. And we are having people, kind of, again, the coordinators trying to establish relationships with the subs who do come in the building, so that we, have their number and we can call them directly and really make sure that we are supporting them. But I'm not lying, it is still difficult.
All right, thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, sorry. I do have some concerns. I have some concerns that I'm looking at slide number 10 with the partner calibration assessment. We did not, it looks like between the partners, not one of the slides following that had a 3, that they were 2 or below. I'm concerned, and not asking you to answer this part right away, because I'll formulate my specific questions. But for example, on some of the slides where it was even below a 2.5, we have here in front of us slides with more strengths instead of more areas of focus. And so I have concerns about that. On one of them even, I think the score was a 1, and yet all we have written down was strengths for that, for transportation. So I'm not sure if it was just the way it was presented to us. Wasn't sure if it was what we used to call area coordinators and maybe a disconnect between the level between you and our administration. So I just want to say to be continued. I'm going to go ahead and formulate my exact questions from this presentation, but I don't have as warm and fuzzy feelings from if this partner calibration score came from both groups, and yet there's not 1 3 on here. So those are my
I
concerns.
kind of was curious too, like kind of how the rubric worked, like did you really sit down and just have a discussion and come up with these strengths and area of weaknesses, or was there, a checklist rubric type thing that was used to come up with the 1.7 or whatever, the 2.8?
Yeah, so
And that can be provided to us through email.
Sure.
too,
whatever
yeah.
you prefer, or I can address it now.
So,
Okay.
all right, anyone else? Do you have more?
No, thank you.
And I will say specifically on the transportation piece, I think that was a piece where, when Dr. Lawson and I were talking about it, and it talks about whether there was a written transportation agreement that the partner district has. And there's not. I mean, there are some pieces that, quite honestly, as I read through it, and maybe even as Dr. Lawson went through it, I can't speak for her, but it was kind of like, well, that's something we might want to develop. Do I feel like something like a missing transportation agreement and an honest score of 1 is a detriment for the services we are currently providing to our students who have IEPs? In that regard, no, but that might be 1 out of the 7 areas.
So one thing in particular I would look for, like on Character Ed, you have the stakeholders fill it out that may or may not be using the services. You have the parents, you have the students, you have the staff from both districts, et cetera. Then you calibrate all those scores. So I would like to see who all was involved, how many people, was it a survey, was it a Likert scale, was it qualitative and quantitative data? I mean, these are some of the things I'll put together in my questions. Thanks. So not to put you on the spot, thank you, Joy.
Not a worry.
Thank you
so much.
And I know that tonight, the purpose of this wasn't to talk about data and performance, but I am wondering if in the future we will have you back to kind of go over some of those things and see if we're kind of meeting those IEP goals, and if we're also making growth and progress in other areas of learning as well.
Well, and I think that's
my
the
questions are different. It's more staff to staff.
Right.
Well, and I do think that's the benefit of having like a designated rubric now. We can monitor for growth. When things are new like that and you don't have the baseline, going back to your example of the transportation, like, whoa, is this something we should have been doing? It doesn't mean that people haven't been collaborating on what's best for a student in an IEP to determine if they need transportation services through SSD, but there are like procedural elements underneath of it that need to get shorn up.
Yes, and I meant, mine was not pertaining to this particular presentation. I know that what I was just discussing was not the purpose of this presentation, but I feel like we have not kind of had that in the past, so I hope going forward we will. So, thanks.
I am here for it. Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And of course, you can reach out to Dr. Lawson, Dr. Doyle, or Dr. Sparks for more information. Anyone?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll move to 12.0, citizen communication regarding non-agenda items, and we have one this evening, Mr. Alex Swolk. And then, we just ask that you be respectful and adhere to our 3-minute time limit, and thank you for coming.
Hi, how long is the time limit? Oh, 3 minutes, okay, I gotta hurry then. So first I want to start that I'm a proud Lindbergh parent, and we love our schools, most importantly our teachers. My mom was a retired SSD teacher for like 40 years, so, a big admiration for educators in general. But I'm here tonight representing the parents of Caddyshack Circle and Pagoda Bus Stop for Bus 28, which continues to be a major danger to the young children as young as 5 who use it. There's not been a day that has gone by in my daily presence there when the stop sign at this intersection has not been run through multiple times. We had the same exact issues last year, and when we reached out to this administration, they acknowledged the danger and restored the stop to where it had been since the subdivision was built many years ago, maybe 15 years I think it was there. We were really upset to see earlier this year that the safe stop was removed again, but we assumed it was some kind of oversight. We reached out to the administration board on August 22nd, or the administration and the board on August 22nd, to have our safe stop reinstated. We sent a very detailed email, including multiple video evidences of drivers running the stop signs, speeding, even with parents, kids, and police present. We requested a meeting to discuss this matter in more detail and try to come up with a safe solution. Ms. Vetter, who unfortunately isn't here, she was the only person that replied to that initial email. She acknowledged that she saw the videos and offered to meet. However, she unfortunately didn't respond to our follow-ups. Even more disappointing, we even campaigned and put yard signs for, 2 of the board members here that, completely ignored the issue as well and just didn't even, reach out to us. I did get a phone call at the end of the day Friday from the CFO informing me that the stop was safe. The admin was not concerned of what my evidence showed. When I suggested the parents might act as crossing guards when the bus comes to ensure safe boarding, she said she would have to call the police on us parents if we did so. The following week, I received a call from Dr. Lake defending her position that nothing further would be done to ensure the kids' safety. He even jokingly suggested it was too bad another house just wasn't a bit further from the furthest house in our stop, as they would have to add a stop to comply with their policies. I did not find humor in this, as I think the kids' safety is not something to be cavalier about. He then indicated he was very busy and was clearly trying to end the conversation at that point. However, I'd forgotten to ask him on the call if we had seen the video evidence, or if he had seen the video evidence I had shared with him. So I included the videos again in an email with that question. He responded that he had forwarded the videos to the CFO and Director of Safety, but I replied to this email again with a question. But did you actually watch the videos? He immediately called me and said he wanted to talk over the phone instead of an email. I asked him if he had seen the videos, which he refused to acknowledge if he had. I asked him as a fellow parent to please watch the videos, and again, he would not even confirm that he would.
Sir, can you please wrap it up?
Okay. Basically, there might be issues with the external side. We as parents feel that it's a very dangerous stop. It continues to be a hazard. People run it every day. I'm afraid something terrible is going to happen before, until this is acknowledged. I just think it's just really disappointing that we're not getting any communication back on this thing, and, I just feel like we're being blown off.
Thank you, sir.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
And I just want to finish with, I just hate, I love the district, we love the things, but, we'd hate to bring negative attention to our school safety policies, but safety of our kids are always going to be most important, and it's something that I'm not going to ignore. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have already conducted our executive session, and there's no need, so we will move to 15.0 adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn board meeting 1561?
So moved.
Motion by Kathy.
Second.
Second by Mike. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Board meeting 1561 is adjourned.